Welcome to 21st Century Dating Decoded. We're making modern love simple. Get ready to decode your love life. Brought to you by Speed Mingle.
Welcome to Spirit Sparks and Real Connections.
The anti-speed date.
Exactly. Welcome into the deep dive. We're doing something a little different today because we are looking at a massive cultural rebellion happening right now in the world of romance.
Oh, yeah. A total rejection of what dating has been for the last decade.
Right. So, usually when we talk about diagnosing a problem, there's this expectation of clinical precision. Like, you break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged white line, and the doctor says, boom, there's the problem.
It's binary. Broken or not broken.
Yeah, it's clean, it is visible, and honestly, it's deeply comforting to have things so easily categorized. But then you step into the world of human connection, specifically modern dating, and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely shattered.
Just completely broken. The landscape right now is so murky. And honestly, it's just exhausting for people.
It really is. We've got these new market assessments out of Florida, specifically looking at the Treasure Coast, and they're pointing to a massive structural failure. Like, we tried for the last decade to engineer romance as if it was a supply chain issue.
Right. Treating human beings like data points.
Exactly. A strict algorithm of left and right swipes. And the data is telling us quite loudly that the machine is failing.
It's failing spectacularly. I mean, we essentially traded the vulnerability of in-person connection for the illusion of infinite digital choice.
Which is such a wild trade-off when you think about it.
It is. What we're seeing now across psychological studies and dating trend analyses is a total systemic rejection of the app-based dating era. People are tired of this period of hyper-efficiency and digital extraction. They want to go back to something fundamentally more human.
But tearing down that digital scaffolding is causing incredible growing pains, right? Especially when people try to take their app-trained behaviors out into the real world.
Oh, the transition is brutal. It's what we call uncertified dating. We're in this sort of dark age of endless text threads and ghosting.
Ugh, the ghosting.
Yeah, and digital filter fatigue. We have modern dating culture fully embracing these raw, unfiltered desires, but simultaneously abandoning all structure and boundaries.
Well, let's talk about the fatigue for a second, because I was reading through the recent Forbes health survey we pulled for this deep dive, and the sheer scale of it is staggering. 78% of dating app users report experiencing severe burnout.
78%.
Yep.
That's practically everyone.
Right. That isn't just a mild annoyance with the user interface. That is people viewing the pursuit of a partner as a second, deeply unrewarding job.
It totally is a second job. And according to trend analysts at Mashable, this frustration is driving a massive exodus. Singles are flocking to IRL events simply because they've hit a breaking point.
IRL meaning in person, just to clarify.
Right, in-person events. The apps have basically stopped functioning as tools and have morphed into psychological slot machines.
I love that analogy, a slot machine. Because that's exactly what it feels like.
And that's how these platforms were explicitly designed to function, by the way. For years, the digital dating ecosystem was fueled entirely by FOMO. The fear of missing out.
Always thinking someone better is just one swipe away.
Exactly. The variable reward schedule of a dating app trains your brain to believe that the absolute perfect match is always just around the corner. It literally commodifies hope.
Wow. Commodifies hope. That's dark, but so accurate.
But human beings can only sustain that level of hypervigilance for so long before the nervous system rebels. So what we are observing in the 2026 landscape is the aggressive rise of JOMO.
The joy of missing out.
Yes. Singles are becoming fiercely protective of their peace. They're refusing to engage in mindless swiping, instead treating their dating lives as a relational portfolio.
Okay, let's unpack this relational portfolio concept, because it borrows directly from finance and risk management, which I find fascinating.
It completely reframes modern romance. It's about intentionality. You have to view your dating life as a portfolio that requires strategy and risk management rather than just passive app swiping.
Right. Instead of casting the widest net possible, which was the entire ethos of the Tinder and Bumble era, people are suddenly practicing extreme intentionality. They're looking at their emotional bandwidth as finite capital.
Which it is. Emotional bandwidth is absolutely finite.
Yeah, and if a date doesn't offer a high probability of value alignment, they would literally rather stay home on a Friday night, protect their peace, and read a book.
They're managing their investments.
Yeah.
And honestly, part of that management is avoiding the real-world pitfalls of modern habits. Let's call out some bad habits here.
Oh, please do.
How many times do you see outdated, poorly lit headshots with expired digital filters on dating profiles. It's absurd. Like, hiding behind a dog-ear filter from 6 years ago is not good portfolio management.
It's terrible marketing. But it goes to show that the metric for a successful dating life has shifted entirely. It's moved from the volume of interactions to the quality and depth of a very small handful of connections. It is the driving philosophy behind what the industry is calling the slow dating movement.
And that shift requires a totally different approach to initial conversations. If you are managing a relational portfolio, you cannot afford to waste capital on dead-end investments.
Right, which brings us to hardballing.
Yes, hardballing. Daters are completely bypassing the generic performative small talk. Nobody cares about the weather or what you're watching on Netflix right now.
Thank goodness, that stuff is so boring.
They are sitting down and immediately asking the structural questions. What are your financial habits? What does emotional stability look like to you? Are you actually available for a commitment?
It sounds so intense, like a job interview.
It sounds intense, but it's a necessary overcorrection. They are trying to establish the risk profile of the connection up front.
I do want to push back on the underlying drivers of this slow dating movement, though, because the data points heavily to economic factors forcing this shift.
Oh, absolutely. The economy is a huge player here.
Yeah, 52% of Gen Z daters state that inflation and the cost of living directly dictate their dating habits. The traditional high-stakes dinner date is effectively dead.
The $100 bar tab and the fancy tasting menu are just not realistic for most people right now.
Right. And this has given rise to micromance. Bumble data shows 86% of singles now view low-cost gestures, like sending a hyper-specific meme or building a shared Spotify playlist, as highly meaningful affection.
It's all about the small things now.
So my question is, are we actually experiencing a grand philosophical awakening toward intentional dating, or are people just completely broke? Like, is micromance just a socially acceptable cover for low-effort dating because nobody can afford a reservation at a state house anymore?
It's a beautifully cynical question. And economics absolutely play a massive role. When you strip away the financial ability to hide behind the ambiance of a high-end restaurant, you are forced to rely on actual chemistry.
It forces a poverty of purse to create a wealth of conversation.
Exactly. But the data suggests it goes much deeper than just shrinking disposable income. Look at the metrics around sober curiosity and dry dating.
Oh, right, the dry dating trend. That's huge right now.
67% of Gen Z and 63% of millennials are actively seeking to connect without alcohol as a social lubricant. Now, if this were purely about saving money, you'd see a massive spike in people sneaking flasks into public parks.
That's a really strong point. Choosing sobriety on a date isn't about dodging the cocktail bill, it's about demanding total clarity.
Precisely. They want to know unequivocally if the connection they are feeling is genuine or if it's just a tequila-induced buzz that's going to evaporate by morning. They are rejecting artificial enhancements entirely.
Whether that is a Michelin-starred distraction or lowered inhibitions from a couple of IPAs.
Yeah. And interestingly, technology is still playing a role in this quest for clarity, but its function has inverted. We see 26% of singles utilizing AI, not to replace romance, but to act as a preliminary screener.
Wait, like having AI vet your dates?
Kind of, yeah. They are using AI to filter out glaring deal breakers and incompatibilities before ever leaving the house. They are using high-speed technology to clear the runway so they can engage in slowness and intentionality where it actually matters, which is face-to-face.
So the landscape is set. We have an entire generation of singles who are burned out on apps, prioritizing sober clarity, demanding upfront value alignment, and they are hyper-protective of their time.
Which naturally leads them to turn to real-world in-person events. Eventbrite is seeing over 1.5 million searches for IRL singles events.
But here is the massive collision we have to talk about. The traditional legacy solution that the events industry offers, standard speed dating, is fundamentally incompatible with everything these new daters want.
It is the exact opposite of what they are looking for.
Right. In fact, based on the psychological studies we have in the source stack, legacy speed dating is practically a psychological torture device.
The legacy model is built on an industrial high-volume processing philosophy. It treats human connection as a logistical hurdle to be cleared as quickly as possible.
I was reading the Speed Mingle manifesto, which is one of the emerging alternatives we'll get into later, and they use this brilliant analogy. Going to a traditional speed dating event feels exactly like going through the TSA security line at the airport.
Oh, that is so spot on. The TSA line of romance.
Right. You are essentially standing there barefoot, holding your belt, while an organizer with a clipboard treats you like a manageable logistical payload.
It's so demeaning.
It is. You are stripped of your individual context, shoved into a rigid demographic holding pen, and forced to endure a high-speed, deeply transactional security screening with a stranger while a whistle blows every 3 minutes.
The TSA line metaphor captures the emotional sterility perfectly, but we really need to look at what that environment actually does to the human brain.
The neurology behind this is fascinating.
It really is. The environment of a traditional speed dating event requires individuals to face rapid-fire, immediate judgments. Often this includes implicit or explicit public rejection.
Or the immense pressure of a direct face-to-face contact request while a literal timer is ticking down.
Exactly. And brain imaging studies have shown us that the human brain does not easily distinguish between physical trauma and acute social rejection. Social rejection lights up the exact same neural pathways as physical pain.
Wait, really? The exact same pathways?
Yes. So you walk into a poorly lit hotel conference room, and your brain is essentially prepping for physical combat. You are flooding the system with cortisol,
You're inducing a severe fight-or-flight response.
which actively suffocates the relaxed, vulnerable parasympathetic state required to actually form romantic chemistry. It is a biological paradox.
It really is. The event is designed to create romance, but the architecture of the event makes romance physiologically impossible.
And we have clinical observations of this exact phenomenon. The Harvard Business School conducted a study where 110 participants were subjected to 15 to 19 consecutive dates in a single session.
19 dates. Just the math on that is horrifying. Meeting 19 strangers in the span of an hour and 15 minutes.
With each date lasting precisely 4 minutes.
The sensory overload alone would make you entirely numb by date number 6.
It leads to severe cognitive depletion. By the end of the session, participants aren't evaluating compatibility. They're literally just trying to survive the social barrage.
It sounds like an endurance test.
It gets worse. The physiological distortion goes even further. A separate study published in the journal Frontiers varied the length of these rapid-fire dates from 180 seconds up to 375 seconds.
Okay, so up to like 6 minutes.
Right. And they uncovered a fascinating psychological mechanism. During these high scrutiny, artificial encounters, temporal perception literally distorts. Time physically felt like it was slowing down for the women in the study, but not for the men.
I kept thinking about the mechanism behind that time distortion. Why women specifically?
It's super interesting, right?
It is, and it makes sense when you consider the evolutionary psychology of high scrutiny environments. When you place someone in a highly structured artificial setting where they feel hyper-analyzed and potentially vulnerable, their brain goes into a hyper-vigilant threat assessment mode.
Their brain starts logging every micro-expression, every shift in tone.
Exactly. Processing vastly more information per second than it normally would in a relaxed setting. When your brain processes more data frames per second to ensure safety, the subjective experience of time stretches out. A 375-second date feels like an agonizing eternity because the brain is working in overdrive.
It highlights exactly how unnatural the legacy structure is. And rather than mitigating this anxiety, event organizers frequently compound it through sheer logistical incompetence.
Let's talk about the organizers, because the Photify blog guide to event organizing in our sources outlines the chronic mistakes that plague this industry.
Oh, the mistakes are endless. You have organizers booking 70-30 gender splits because they just want to sell out the room, regardless of the experience.
So you have 30% of the room just sitting there waiting. That's awful.
Or they cram 40 people into a tiny, acoustically hostile room so everyone is screaming over each other just to share basic biographical facts.
Which is so romantic, screaming your job title over a bad PA system.
And they rely on clunky paper forms that people lose or misread. But perhaps the most egregious violation of psychological safety is the practice of publicly revealing match counts at the end of the night.
Oh, this makes me so angry. Announcing to a room full of strangers that a specific participant received 0 matches is a level of cruelty that defies logic.
It's basically public humiliation.
Which brings us to a massive structural flaw in how these legacy events operate, one that is creating widespread isolation in places that desperately need community. I really want to zero in on the Florida Treasure Coast here. Places like St. Lucie County, Martin County, Vero Beach.
The demographic makeup there is incredibly diverse. You have a highly active, robust, older population.
Yes, exactly. Yet the traditional speed dating events in this market operate under the absolute tyranny of the expiration date.
The expiration date, yes. The reliance on rigid chronological age bands is perhaps the most intellectually lazy tool used by legacy organizers.
I was looking at Eventbrite listings across West Palm Beach, Cocoa Beach, and Fort Lauderdale, and the gatekeeping is relentless. You see events strictly gated for ages 24 to 39, or tightly bracketed for 40 to 55, or strictly walled off for the 50s and 60s.
And what happens in practice is infuriating.
It really is. You have a vibrant, active 40-year-old dater who wants to attend an event. Do they go to the 24 to 39 event and get turned away at the door for being 1 year over the arbitrary limit?
Right. Or do they go to the 40 to 55 event where they are the absolute youngest in the room and might feel totally out of place?
They are finding themselves entirely excluded from the social ecosystem because they fall just outside of a manufactured 2-year window. It makes zero sense.
And this age segregation completely ignores the sociological reality of the 21st century. We are seeing the total collapse of the chronological peer group.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The chronological peer group. Explain that.
So, if you look back historically, age was a highly reliable shorthand for your life stage. The cultural blueprint was remarkably consistent. At 18, you graduated. At 25, you were married.
At 30, you bought a house and had a kid.
Exactly. In that era, grouping people by a 5-year age band made logical sense because it practically guaranteed a shared lifestyle and shared priorities.
But that blueprint doesn't exist anymore. The timeline is completely fractured. Today, you can have a 35-year-old and a 50-year-old who share infinitely more lifestyle alignment than two people born in the exact same year.
100%. You might have a 35-year-old and a 50-year-old who are both remote workers, deeply passionate about clear kayaking and aggressively child-free.
Conversely, you could have two 30-year-olds where one is a digital nomad living out of a Springer van and the other is a settled suburban parent of 3. Age is no longer a blueprint for character.
And it's certainly no longer a reliable predictor of romantic compatibility. It is merely a chronological context.
Yet the dating industry stubbornly clings to it, and unfortunately, the daters themselves internalize it. The market assessments from the Treasure Coast note a deeply frustrating phenomenon among older Floridians.
This part is so sad to me. Many of these individuals are attending these events specifically to combat the profound isolation that often accompanies aging.
Right. They might be utilizing fantastic local resources like the Council on Aging of Martin County just to build community. They muster the immense courage required to step back into the dating pool, and when they finally get there, they self-sabotage.
It is genuinely heartbreaking to read about. They sit across from someone who matches their values, who shares their sense of humor, who enjoys the exact same local activities, and they reject them.
They filter out a wonderful, compatible companion simply because the person sitting across from them doesn't fit perfectly into a preconceived, narrow 2-year age window they've built in their head.
They are prioritizing a number on a driver's license over actual lived human connection.
It is a self-inflicted wound born out of outdated cultural conditioning. And the irony is, we recognize how toxic and discriminatory these arbitrary age cutoffs are in almost every other facet of society, particularly in the professional world.
The legal briefing documents in our source stack highlight a fascinating parallel happening right now in New Jersey regarding workplace age discrimination.
The NJLAD cases, this completely recontextualized the issue for me.
It's a crucial legal parallel. In New Jersey, victims of age discrimination in the workplace are actively bypassing the federal system. They are utilizing the New Jersey law against discrimination, the NJLAD, to file their lawsuits directly in state superior court.
Why are they doing that? Just to speed things up?
Yes, exactly. They do this intentionally to circumvent the sluggish, bureaucratic delays of the federal ADEA, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. They need fast, aggressive legal action because the professional world recognizes that judging someone's capability or value based on an arbitrary chronological number is not only deeply unethical, it is illegal.
So we have a society where arbitrary age cutoffs are considered so deeply toxic and discriminatory in the workplace that people are fast-tracking state lawsuits just to get justice.
Yeah.
Yet on a Friday night on the Treasure Coast, we not only accept that exact same age discrimination in our social lives, we eagerly hand over our credit cards to event organizers and pay them to enforce those discriminatory boundaries on us.
It addresses cognitive dissonance on a massive scale. And to make matters worse, the organizers enforcing these age bans rarely do it out of a genuine belief in matchmaking. They do it for logistical convenience and profit margins.
That one event in Hoover mentioned in the sources really stood out to me.
Oh, that was wild. The promoter collapsed a massive 18-year age span into a single room. They threw 28-year-olds and 46-year-olds into the exact same rigid, high-speed rotation.
And they didn't do this because they believed those two demographics were highly compatible. They did it simply to maximize ticket sales, cover the venue overhead, and hit their profit targets.
They treated the attendees like cattle. They completely ignored the fact that those two age groups possess entirely different generational touchstones and communication styles.
And that logistical obsession, treating human beings like cargo to fit into an age bracket or a venue quota, doesn't just ruin the romance, it actually creates a massive security vulnerability. Because when organizers care more about volume and speed than they do about the human experience, your personal privacy is the very first casualty.
Let's dig into what the sources call the privacy paradox.
Please. At a traditional legacy speed dating event, the privacy violations start the second you walk through the door. You are handed a cheap, generic paper name tag and a Sharpie.
You are effectively forced to immediately broadcast your full name to a room full of strangers.
Right. And because the format relies on rapid-fire small talk, the very first question out of everyone's mouth is, what do you do for work?
Which completely dismantles any sense of psychological safety or present moment connection. When you force immediate identity and professional disclosure in a room full of strangers, you are handing them the keys to your entire digital footprint.
And what happens next is just inevitable in 2026. People retreat to their smartphones.
Yep. Under the table, while you are trying to tell a story about your life, the person sitting across from you is conducting a real-time background check.
They are auditing your LinkedIn, they are scrolling through your Instagram, they are judging your digital posture before you even had a chance to finish your drink.
You aren't dating the person in front of you. You're dating their search engine optimization.
That is such a depressing reality. But the privacy deficit goes far beyond just a sneaky Google search under the table. When you throw strangers into high-density proximity events without rigorous behavioral boundaries, it devolves rapidly.
There's a deeply unsettling account in our sources from a Reddit user, Servano7352.
Yeah, that post was intense.
Very. They documented a total failure of physical and psychological safety at an unregulated event. When organizers act merely as promoters rather than stewards of a safe environment, the participants are left completely exposed.
Because high-density social environments require meticulous boundary management. Without it, the environment becomes predatory. But the most alarming privacy violation detailed in the industry reports is the systematic exploitation of attendees' visual autonomy.
The photography issue. This is where things get genuinely legally and ethically murky.
It made my blood pressure spike. The sources detail the operational tactics of the IYKYK event series and similar legacy operators. These companies bury sweeping legal disclaimers deep in the fine print of their online ticket sales.
By simply buying a ticket to try and meet someone, you are unknowingly signing away your visual rights.
These organizers station photographers around the room, capturing you at your most vulnerable, awkward moments, like trying to flirt, dealing with a rejection, just trying to put yourself out there.
And then, without ever asking for explicit, on-the-spot consent, they broadcast those photos on the venue's social media for commercial promotion.
It is a profound violation of trust.
In an era governed by pervasive digital tracking and facial recognition, visual privacy is a premium asset. When a participant knows, even subconsciously, that they might be photographed and broadcast to a brewery's thousands of Instagram followers, they cannot relax.
They maintain a rigid, performative posture. They remain on guard.
And if you are on guard, you cannot be vulnerable. And without vulnerability, romantic chemistry is an absolute impossibility. The event defeats its own purpose the moment the camera flash goes off.
So how does the industry correct this? The sources point to a radical revolution happening right now on the Florida Treasure Coast, spearheaded by an ecosystem called Speed Mingle.
Their approach to the age bias, the privacy violations, and the digital stalking is a concept called demographic blindness, combined with absolute visual autonomy.
Demographic blindness. I was completely fascinated by the mechanics of this digital scaffold. When you arrive at one of these modern events, the clipboards and the paper name tags are entirely gone.
Thank goodness.
Instead, you go through a frictionless digital orientation using a web app called SmartSync. The app assigns you an anonymized handle. And here's the radical part. The explicit exchange of last names, phone numbers, or social media handles is strictly prohibited on site.
A total enforced ban on demographic and digital exchange. And they pair that with a rigorous no-photo guarantee. There is no event photography and no promotional social media capturing allowed whatsoever.
By systematically stripping away the ability to rely on digital posturing, the environment forces attendees to tune back into actual in-person human bandwidth.
You can't look up their LinkedIn. You can't filter them out because they are 2 years older than your ideal bracket. You are forced to rely entirely on microexpressions, the cadence of their voice, their sense of humor, and genuine chemistry.
But I am stuck on the logistics of the follow-up. I completely understand and appreciate the safety of anonymity in the room. But if I have a fantastic conversation with someone, and the rules explicitly forbid me from asking for their phone number, how do we actually connect? Doesn't this heavily scaffolded anonymity make the event feel a little too secretive?
Like we're just replacing the acute awkwardness of a face-to-face rejection with the lingering paranoia of a masked ball.
Yes, exactly.
It's a highly valid critique. If implemented poorly, it could feel incredibly clinical. But the connection is handled by what the framework calls a digital bouncer. It operates as an asynchronous post-event match engine.
Asynchronous. So delayed.
Exactly. By deferring the match results until after everyone has physically left the venue and gone home, the system entirely eliminates the cortisol spike of real-time rejection. You aren't put on the spot.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
You log into the SmartSync app later from the safety and comfort of your own couch, and you indicate who you felt a connection with. You only receive someone's actual contact information if there is a mutual double opt-in.
That is incredibly smart. It removes the threat level from the physical room entirely.
And that is the true genius of the model. By offloading all of the administrative friction, the safety protocols, and the logistical matching to the digital app operating silently in the background, the physical venue is completely liberated. The physical space is no longer a processing center. It is freed up for a psychological concept called parallel play.
Parallel play. I know that term from child psychology. It is when toddlers are playing next to each other, engaged in their own activities, rather than playing directly with each other. It completely removes the pressure of direct, sustained eye contact and forced social interaction.
And adults require it just as much as toddlers do, especially when dealing with social anxiety. This is where the utilization of the local Treasure Coast venues becomes the secret weapon of the St. Lucie County market.
They are abandoning the depressing fluorescent-lit hotel conference rooms.
Moving into spaces that naturally facilitate this parallel play.
The date night catalog in our source stack highlights exactly how they are doing this, and the venues are stunning. They are taking advantage of the local Florida geography. We're talking about events structured around clear bottom kayak tours at Fort Pierce Inlet State Park.
That sounds amazing.
When you are paddling a kayak and looking down at manatees, the pressure is entirely off. You aren't staring across a tiny table, sweating through an interrogation. You are sharing an experience. Or they organize sunset strolls down the 1,200-foot jetty in Fort Pierce.
They're also utilizing established local hubs that naturally dictate a relaxed atmosphere. Sharing a pint at Sailfish Brewing Company or Hop Life Brewery in Port St. Lucie.
And for those older demographics who want to avoid the chaotic energy of family-oriented restaurants, they utilize spaces like the Square Grouper Tiki Bar,
which enforces a strict 21 and over policy, allowing adults to just be adults in a curated environment.
It ties perfectly back to what we discussed at the very beginning of the deep dive. By utilizing beautiful, budget-friendly outdoor spaces and local breweries, they lean into the slow dating trend. It forces poverty of purse to create a wealth of conversation.
You can't impress someone by buying a $400 bottle of wine on a kayak.
Yeah.
You actually have to be interesting.
But let's be honest, even without a paper name tag and even on a beautiful beach, small talk can still stall out. Meeting strangers is inherently awkward.
Which is why the modern paradigm doesn't just leave people to fend for themselves. They introduce structured interaction tools designed to bypass small talk entirely. The sources mentioned the integration of 52+2, the card game, specifically utilized at events like the Vine and Vibe Speed Mingle, hosted at the Vine and Bartley.
I looked into this game. It is designed to act as a conversational crowbar. It provides highly specific micro-prompts that force a level of low-stakes vulnerability immediately.
You aren't allowed to ask, what do you do for work?
Instead, the prompt might force you to explain your most irrational fear, or the last time you changed your mind about something important. It forces genuine personality to shine through the awkwardness rapidly.
It completely reframes the social ecosystem. And what's fascinating is how the Speed Mingle framework recognizes that not everyone is looking for the exact same type of interaction. They've broken their events down into 6 highly specific intentional modalities.
Let's go through those because the modalities are a brilliant way to manage expectations. You have the Speed Mingle Anywhere format.
That's authentic, face-to-face video interactions right from home. Perfect for initial low-pressure vetting.
Then you have the social track, which are relaxed, non-hosted weekly gatherings at these local venues. It's just about getting people in the same room with no pressure.
Then there's the happenings modality. This is entirely activity-based, like the kayaking tours or the jetty walks, where the shared activity acts as the primary focus, completely eliminating the need for sustained small talk.
And my personal favorite, which directly addresses the isolation issue on the Treasure Coast, the neighbors modality.
Yes, this is a high-energy format specifically designed to turn local strangers into friends. Absolutely no romance required, no dating pressure allowed.
That specific modality is vital because as we saw with the older demographics utilizing the Council on Aging, the immediate goal isn't always finding a spouse. Sometimes the goal is simply ending a profound sense of isolation. It's about building a local, reliable community.
And when you remove the romantic pressure, you often create the exact relaxed environment where romance organically blossoms anyway. It's a win-win.
It is a complete masterclass in social engineering, but engineering for humanity rather than efficiency. Oh, and we shouldn't forget the B2B modality.
Right, the B2B format is a high-octane, round-robin professional networking setup. It maximizes your career circle using the same efficient blind demographic principles.
And launching in the fall of 2026, they are rolling out the one-to-one modality, which offers pre-vetted, personalized, low-pressure meetings based on real compatibility.
They're really covering all the bases.
So let's synthesize everything we unpacked today. We started by examining a culture that is deeply, fundamentally fatigued by the infinite, exhausting scroll of digital dating apps.
We are looking at a 78% burnout rate, driven by the gamification of human connection.
We recognize that the old-school alternative, legacy speed dating with its clipboards, arbitrary whistles, and relentless, discriminatory two-year age brackets wasn't a solution at all.
It was actually causing acute psychological pain, spiking cortisol levels, and perpetuating massive privacy violations through forced data disclosure and non-consensual photography.
The legacy system was built entirely for the financial and logistical convenience of the event organizer, with complete disregard for the emotional safety and connection of the participant.
Exactly. And what we are seeing emerge, particularly pioneered in the St. Lucie County and broader Florida Treasure Coast markets, is the ultimate antidote to that era.
By combining beautiful, budget-friendly local venues that encourage parallel play with a strict privacy-first digital framework. A framework that enforces demographic blindness, guarantees visual autonomy, and utilizes asynchronous matching to eliminate face-to-face rejection.
They are successfully bringing low-pressure, authentic chemistry back to the real world. It is a return to extreme intentionality.
So for anyone navigating this landscape, the takeaways are clear. Stop viewing your dating life as a volume game and start managing your relational portfolio. Throw out the strict chronological expiration dates that are keeping you isolated.
Demand rigorous privacy and visual autonomy in your social environments. And most importantly, embrace the slow burn of shared real-world experiences.
Reevaluate your own internal metrics. Stop filtering out wonderful companions over a 2-year age gap that means absolutely nothing in the context of shared values. And hey, if you are looking to break out of the digital rut, take the initiative. Go attend a local Speed Mingle event to mix, match, and mingle.
And if an event isn't currently available in your area, you can contact Speed Mingle to become a local host or a venue partner. They are actively expanding.
You can catch our deep dives across all the major platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and Deezer.
And for video, check out the Speed Mingle network on YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, or the mobile web app at speedmingle.mobi.
The official hub for everything is 21st Century Dating Decoded.com. Please smash that subscribe button, drop us a 5-star review, and share this deep dive with that friend who still uses an expired dog ear filter on a poorly lit headshot. You know exactly who we're talking about.
They need to hear this.
They really do. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the evolution of modern connection, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final philosophical thought to mull over. We have talked extensively about the mechanics of demographic blindness, the banning of photos, the hiding of professions, the masking of age. We're using technology to blind ourselves so we can actually see the person in front of us.
It's a beautiful inversion.
It is. If the ultimate evolution of dating successfully removes all of our digital posturing, if it enforces an environment where we literally don't even know each other's stats, salaries, or birth years, will the future of romance eventually render our physical and chronological preferences completely obsolete?
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Are we moving toward a radical future that forces us to fall deeply in love with a stranger's mind long before we ever have the chance to know their age? It's a beautiful and slightly terrifying something to think about. Until our subsequent episode, remain deliberate, maintain protection, and consistently date with a defined purpose.
Welcome to Speed Mingle.
Where making real connections happens in
Stream,
seconds.
swipe, socialize, your ultimate connection network.
Jump in now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Speed Mingle Network.